Welcome back to another episode of Silent Pals Go to the Movies. Today I'm going to be reviewing Top Gun Maverick. So just a fair warning, there's going to be spoilers up ahead, so you've been warned. After more than 30 years of service as one of the Navy's top aviators, Pete Mitchell is where he belongs, pushing the envelope as a courageous test pilot and dodging the advance in rank that would ground him. So let's begin with my first pro. Them member berries are really tasty. I didn't even complain about when they used Danger Zone again in the similar opening sequence as the first movie. I was in it since then. It just felt like I was getting back in the same plane as before, and it was just great. Every time an old character came on screen, people in the theater just clapped, and it was understandable because these characters were the ones they grew up with, and also they still cared about them. The nostalgia factor was not that influential in the film like other movies have done before and just trying to rope you in and then dropped you. Here, you actually started off with it. Technically, it's like you're getting back in the plane that you once flew, and now you're back home. So that's how this movie kind of made you feel, along with the characters and everything. It was this familiar place you were going back to. But it didn't stay like that. It actually had changed over the years. Next point. Well, the movie does take place 30 years after, so of course, we would have some things the same and some things that were different. The idea that the movie used the fact that Goose died and left his son, whose call sign was Rooster, alive to follow in his footsteps did make sense. And also the fact that Maverick would sort of see that he wouldn't end up dead because of the promise that he did to Rooster's mother. So this made up the driving force of the plot for them to have resentment between Rooster and Maverick to drive the story forward. And yes, the film takes place 30 years later. There are jokes about Maverick being too old from the young pilots and such, but soon that kind of changes. Next point, the scenes. From the training and also the action scenes were amazing. I feel that there were more of these in this movie than the original, but as soon as the film ended, I still needed the need for speed. I mean, I had an urge to go home and play Ace Combat, since that's going to be the closest thing I'm ever going to have to flying a jet. But I'm sure there are a few that actually did go home and pick up the game controller and spend a few hours playing a simulator or something along those lines. But the scenes were intense, and also the editing was smoother than some scenes from the original. I think it was due to them actually being in jets and flying and not just adding it in post. I mean, Tom Cruise actually did fly one of these jets. So yeah, the dogfighting is there. Just wanted a bit more because why not? Also, the opening where Maverick is testing the aircraft to go Mach 10, that set up the idea that he isn't too old and that he still has it in him to disobey orders. And also, that is just him. He loves to be in disguise and not grounded. Next point, the returning cast along with new cast. So returning was Tom Cruise as Maverick, Val Kilmer as Iceman. Also, let's put Penny Benjamin, who was played by Jennifer Connelly, as a returning cast. She sort of was, because in the original she was hinted as being the daughter of the admiral who flew in a plane with Maverick over the towers, and that's why Maverick got in trouble. So here she returns as the love interest. Also, we have the cast, or shall we call them the new class. We have Phoenix, Bob, Payback, Fanboy, Hangman, Omaha, Fitz, Coyote, Harvard, Yale, and Rooster. All call signs. If you really want to know the actor's name, I would suggest to go to the IMDb because the list is quite long. But I do want to point out that we do have some reskinning on certain characters, such as Hangman. He is the new Iceman, who is kind of cocky, and he is a wingman that is not really a wingman. And Rooster, who looks obviously like Goose, because, you know, of course they are son and father. Why wouldn't they look alike? Next, we have some callbacks to the old film. I will mention a few. First, we have Maverick riding his Kawasaki motorcycle chasing planes. Like in the first movie, we also have him up to his old habits of busting control towers. That doesn't get old, you know, it kind of felt right when you saw it on screen. Some people giggled and some people clapped. Also, like I mentioned before, was the opening sequence and having Danger Zone playing. As a matter of fact, when I first started watching it, I was confused if it was the old sequence or a new sequence, and it kind of put me off for a few minutes. But then when I thought about it, I was like, wait, if this movie can do that to me and I still like this, hey, congratulations. But I think people got a bigger kick when Maverick and Iceman spoke, and they seemed to have everything patched up since Iceman was ill at the time in the movie. But when Iceman asked who is the better pilot between the two of us, and Maverick replied along the lines of, "Don't ruin this good moment we are having," people laughed out loud in the theater, and that was just made it more enjoyable, I would say, because it did bring you back to the old times, and having this as kind of a farewell between these two characters, because Iceman does die, it just felt right, and it was this closing chapter, I would call it. So moving on to the next point, they did reuse some old songs. Yes, Danger Zone shown the Top Gun anthem in the background of some scenes, and of course the Great Balls of Fire rendition by Rooster, just like Goose did in the original movie. But the score this time was done by Lady Gaga, Hans Zimmer, and Lorne Baffel, who all but Lady Gaga played a big role in the first movie. They did participate in making music in the first film or the score, but this time they worked on Hold My Hand, the song by Lady Gaga, and it did fit right into the movie. So music wise, I don't feel that the new score was bad, but it wouldn't stand up to the original if you ask me. The original kind of does outbeat the new one. And with that, I move on to my cons. First is the question, is this a reskinned version just to make us nostalgic? Well, yes and no. No, because we have the story change and we do have new characters that are in the continuity timeline of the last film. But at the same time, yes, because we do have Hangman who takes over Iceman and Rooster who takes over as Goose, with the same issues of having a wingman not stay behind or not follow orders. We also have the updated volleyball scene, but this time in a football game style where defense and offense are active at the same time, or that is how Maverick puts it. So I don't feel that we have a reskinned version, but more of a similar vibe, but heading in the same direction as the original movie. What I did find sort of familiar was the flight attack that they were training for. That sort of reminded me of the Star Wars Death Star attack flight. They needed to fly low in the valley and then target a small target really precisely with a guidance system. And at the end, the guidance system did not work, so they needed to do it manually. But hey, maybe that is just all the attack plans in movies that involve jets, right? Next con is my biggest issue with the film, not showing us Rooster and Maverick fighting before going to the Top Gun school. This would have shown more development between the two characters, maybe show when he pulled the paper so Rooster would not be able to attend fighter pilot school, or other altercations and where Rooster would drop the lines, "You're not my dad," or "Look where it got my dad," to the fact that Maverick is telling him to listen to him and he knows what's best for him. Also, maybe show us some flight battles of the new class, and this way show us that yeah, they are good pilots and that's why they're here, versus us just saying, okay, if you say so. Why not have a contest between the news class to see who had pulled the craziest maneuvers ever at the bar, and for them to share stories and some footage, and then Penny out of nowhere come up and say, hey, well, I know of someone who flew inverted feet away from another jet with Maverick sitting close by, and for him just to say, well, Goose would say it was more of a few inches, to which the new class would have used the line, picture or it never happened, and then Maverick all of a sudden pulling the picture out of his jacket and showing them, just as reference to the old movie and to show them who is really the boss in the sky. Because in reality, I did not care much about the new class. Actually, I cared more about finding out what the call sign Bob stood for, and they never actually answered that question. Next con is the love story between Maverick and Penny. So here is the thing. If you had to reach so deep to find a character that did not appear in the original movie just so that Maverick would have a love interest that didn't add anything to the plot, since you couldn't bring back Kelly McGillis from the original, since Tom Cruise looks like he has the only fountain of youth next to Kelly, it wouldn't seem to work. Thus why you pick Jennifer Connelly to step in. Sorry, but wrong choice, because if you take the character and the love story out of the movie, it still remains the same and it doesn't really affect the movie or add anything to the movie. Use the time you would have spent introducing Penny or Penny with Maverick to develop other characters in the movie that are technically really flying in dangerous missions, since you want us to care for them because they are in the actual danger zone. Sorry for the bad pun, but I just had to do it because I had the need for, okay, you know what, I'm just going to leave it at that. No more puns. My grade for this movie is going to be an 8 out of 10. The film was enjoyable, and especially if you are a fan of the first one, seeing how this one took off after the first one and didn't deviate from the path was nice. Also, they used some new and old music to show us that you can have both in the movie. Only thing that I really wanted more of was a background to the new class, especially to understand each of them and have a better connection for the epic flight at the end. So that does it for this review of Top Gun Maverick. Please join us next time where we are going to review Jurassic World Dominion.
A baby raptor? I made a promise we would bring her home.
You made a promise to a dinosaur.
Yeah. Why?
Please like, comment, and subscribe. You can find our social media links below. And like always, keep watching movies.